So you're on, aren't you? And Emily? Okay. So you won't be surprised to hear that Felicity is a consumer and consumer your health services, and we've tried to have significant consumer input into developing these pathways and guidance. And Felicity, as I said before, she's been a senior project officer who's done an amazing job. So I've no idea what she's going to talk about, so I'll leave it to her.
Thank you, Chris. Well, why are we here talking about consumer partnership? Obviously, one of our national quality standards is around partnering with the consumer, so that's pretty important. But also, we're all here for the one reason, and that's to look after women and their babies. So it's pretty important that, standard or no, and it seems logical to me that we actually involve some women in the work that we do at every level. And certainly there are some excellent papers out there around levels of consumer partnership, involvement, consultation, and that kind of thing. So there's certainly a lot of information around. I'm happy to provide that to anyone after this if they would like it. But we are very fortunate in the project group to have 4 delightful consumers working with us. Emily is one of them. Our others, well, one has 4 children and is juggling them. Another one had a due date yesterday, so is a little bit occupied. And the 4th is interstate. But I am so pleased to welcome you here today, Emily, and your new baby. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to poke that a little closer to you. I guess I just wanted to kick off by asking, what made you interested in being involved in work like this?
Well, partly I was dobbed in by my mum, who is an obstetrician herself. But also I'm one of the lead admins on an online mothers group called Mums in Darebin, and it's one of the biggest things that comes up in the discussions on there. We've got 2,500 members of our group, and there's always people who are anxious about the birth choices they're making and the pregnancy issues that they might be having. And of course, one of our rules is don't ask medical advice, ask your doctor, but it is a source of anxiety. They often feel like they're getting all sorts of different information from different places. So I was just inspired to help that situation.
So by becoming part of the process that you might be able to help improve women's confidence as well, like setting being a role model for stepping up and being involved in things, or by also changing them from within?
Yeah, but by changing them from within, I'm sort of, I'm the black sheep of my family in a way. I'm the only one that hasn't got into healthcare. Instead, I studied drama. So I'm the one who, during the dinner table conversations, is like, what are you talking about? Ooh, blood, it's horrible. So I sort of sympathise with a lot of women who kind of get the information about pregnancy and childbirth and after, antenatal stuff, and just your mind is a bit boggled by the whole thing. I suppose talking about it from within is a good place to start.
Fantastic. And what's made it work for you? I know my experience of working in various services has been that often it can be really difficult to connect with women who have clearly very recent experience of our service. And I suppose what made it easy for you, or not easy, but achievable for you to be contributing to this work despite the fact that you've clearly got a few things on?
Working by email and sort of not having a particular time that I had to be anywhere in particular, and also having, some pretty generous deadlines. It was never like, get back to me tomorrow, read this and get back to me tomorrow. It's like you've sort of got a week or 2 or whatever when you can. Made a big difference to be able to slot it in somewhere, as opposed to feel terrible because I'd completely dropped the ball because my 4-year-old was doing something insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has anything not worked well?
No, I haven't had any issues at all with this process at all. I've got to say, it's been pretty gentle, and it hasn't been sort of really all-consuming or.
That's very gratifying to hear. Do you think there are ways that we could utilise your knowledge and your contribution more? How do you think we could, develop that part of the work moving forward?
I think just continuing the discussion, really, talking about what the experiences of women who are accessing these services actually is, because I think it can be, as I say, the dinner table conversation in our household growing up and continuing. It can often sort of be very kind of flippant about lots of things that are actually kind of terrifying. And it's easy, I think, in the same way that I absolutely cannot understand why every child does not love to come to drama class. I think it's I think it can be hard for people who are in it every day and see it and sort of go, oh, yeah, she'll be right, just chuck her in for a Caesar, she'll be fine. Whereas on the other side, if you're that woman, this is your one of, probably only a handful of birth experiences you're ever going to have. And particularly if you're not someone who comes from a background in health at all, even the littlest thing which seems very, very straightforward to a clinician can be absolutely terrifying. And again, even if it's been your dinner table conversation, it's still terrifying in a lot of cases.
It's understandable. So you have a room of various maternity sector employees here, lots of clinicians. If you wanted them to take one thing away from you being involved in this work and being here today, what do you think it would be?
Just, I suppose, being a little bit mindful of perspective taking generally about, the way that your advice or counsel or news might be received by a potentially completely hormonal and irrational pregnant woman. I think it's easy to forget, having recently been one and probably still slightly one in a way. Something that sort of does seem, as I say, very straightforward can kind of really, at the time when you're sitting in the office talking to them, they're like, okay, I understand. But you're not there at 3 a.m. when they're lying in bed stewing over it. So just, I suppose, having that understanding that that's happening. Yeah.
And when you're having that moment at 3 a.m, what kind of things make it easier to actually go back to the people who are caring for you to look for advice rather than Dr. Google or your online mothers group?
Yeah. Well, I actually remember there was one particular fact sheet or something that I was handed. I can't even remember what it was about. It was something to do. Oh, it was to do with abdominal pains that I'd been having. What it turned out probably to just be round ligament pain. But I'd sort of been stressing a little bit that I was going into preterm labour or something along those lines. And I'd been given a list of dot points. And it was the dot points of when is it normal and when do you call your midwife immediately, basically. And just having that on, in my house was really, really helpful because I could go, oh, hang on, is this one of the dot points? No. Okay, I'm good.
That is so excellent to hear, especially as we have produced some information sheets in relation to these topics. And this is a huge part of what Emily and our other consumers have been working on, is contributing to the content and the wording and what's included and what's left out of those sheets. So I'm glad to hear they do find a home and that we don't just produce these reams of paper to give to people with no purpose. It's terrific. I guess I'm getting the 5 minutes, but I suppose my last question would be, how would you encourage other consumers to step up and be involved?
Well, I suppose the experience that I've got is that social media is incredibly powerful, as is, services such as maternal health services. Almost every new mum is accessing those. Mothers groups, all of that kind of stuff. They're the sort of places that people are reaching out in those early days. In terms of pregnancy, it's much harder because people don't sort of tend to come out of the woodwork until the baby's in their arms. They're sort of not joining up to these mothers groups until day 2, where they're like, oh gosh, I'm really bored in the middle of the night. I want to.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's that until you've got your baby, you just don't get the sort of support you might need, or is it something else that holds people back?
There's not that kind of tribe mentality when you're pregnant quite so much. It's not until you are a mum, part of the mum club, or you're heading there, you're the one who's feeding your baby all night, and you've got people to bounce that off, or you feel you need a little tribal council to talk to about that sort of thing.
Ones who don't vote you out.
Ones who don't vote you out,
good.
preferably. So yeah, I'm not really sure why similar things don't exist in pregnancy. I think the closest I had was my aqua aerobics class, and I don't know where any of them are now. So yeah,
it's interesting to consider. And I did have one last question pop into my head, and that is, we talk a lot about women, and it's absolutely essential, as I said earlier, that as the recipients of all our care, that women are involved. But obviously you have families and partners, and do you think there's a capacity for us to also better engage with them?
I hope so. I don't know what it is. But I know that my husband often will rely on me bringing the information back to him, because he hasn't been able to be at every midwife appointment and hasn't been able to come to every single maternal child health nurse appointment. It would be great if there was another avenue for that.
Interesting. Well, I don't have the answer to that one either, but it's something we can think about. Well, as I say, I'm very thankful, as I'm sure everyone is, for you joining us today, and absolutely thankful for the ongoing contribution to this huge and fabulous project. So thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask before we... Yep.
I did have one. I was just wondering about, in your group of 1,500 women, are there many that...
2,500.
2,500 women, sorry. Many with limited English skills?
Yes.
How do you help them?
As best we can. There's 5 admins in the group, and we have a sort of a private message thread that we're all on, and we chat about different things, like, oh, what's going on with that person? Are they trying to sell Avon, or what have you? But we actually were having a discussion just the other day about one particular member who is very isolated, not in her home country, and ways that we could help her, particularly because she often asks lots of questions very late at night, a bit panicky. And one of the things that we started actually just this week was a sort of a message thread on there that people could post saying they're looking for friends to meet up with in person, and helping, and we were kind of going to manage it a little bit to try and matchmake them almost. We had her in mind specifically, but we've had about 30 people in the past 48 hours just post on there going, I really need someone to go for a walk with, and we've kind of nudged her together with somebody who is from a similar background. So yeah, it's a bit of a process.
So thanks very much, and it's great to have your participation. It sounds like you've managed to influence us all significantly. And I realise we're very rude. I mean, how old is this baby?
Oh, she's 3 weeks.
And she's a she?
She's a she.
And her name is?
Violet.
Violet. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you, Violet, for coming and being so well behaved. And it's lovely to see you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.